Hello, and welcome to Good People, Good Things, a podcast all about putting the spotlight on the special people who do good, fun, and creative things with a desire to make a positive impact on the well-being of individuals and communities at large. This series is brought to you with a mixture of French and, I'm told, South African accent. I am Flo, your host and a yoga teacher by trade. Let me introduce you to Lorna Clansey. Lorna is an Amatsu practitioner and energy worker based in Dulwich, South London. I was not slurring just then when I said that Lorna is an Amatsu practitioner. Amatsu can be described as a therapeutic and holistic approach to the body, which combines a more traditional understanding with anatomy and physiology. I met Lorna over a decade ago in a regular yoga class I was teaching in central London. We quickly found so much common ground that we became friends. We did some skill swaps, Amatsu for yoga, got married, not to each other, but to our respective men, a few months apart, and also had our first child a few months apart. Originally from a small village in Yorkshire, Lorna envisioned herself working with animals as a vet. The universe had another plan. In 2000, after obtaining a degree in psychology at Liverpool University, she knew that her new stop had to be London. There was no gap year or even sunbathing on the beach that summer for Lorna. Friend from university, and 2 weeks after being interviewed for a position at Condé Nast, living and working in London became a dream come true. She moved to the big city and never left. Parallel to working progressively part-time at Condé Nast for over a decade, Lorna was building what is her craft today. She trained first as a coach in 2007, did a Reiki teacher training, level 1 and 2, and in 2000 she became an Amatsu practitioner. Over the last couple of years, Lorna had dived deep into energy work. She will explain to us what it means and in what ways. As a person, Lorna is very knowledgeable, perceptive and positive. She's caring, grounded and wise, loves walks in nature, and generally speaking, leads a healthy lifestyle. Lorna, welcome and thank you for joining us on Good People, Good Things today. So let's dive in. So I want you to speak first about Amatsu, because even though Amatsu is thousands of years old, it's still not a household name like other discipline that might come across maybe as similar to some people might be. So when and how did you come across Amatsu? And we're going to explain what it is as well, more specifically.
Yeah, most people haven't heard of it. In fact, I'm more surprised when people tell me that they have. I'm always quite shocked. It does happen occasionally, but generally it is something that people haven't heard of, which is such a shame because in all my years of doing complementary therapies just for myself, I've never come across anything that I think is as potent and as effective as Amatsu. So it is a shame that it's not better known. But it really was meant to be, I think, for me. I was on holiday in Sri Lanka and I was at a bit of a turning point in my life. I was trying to make some decisions about my career. But one of the things I was actively looking for, was a way of working with people that involved the body as well as speaking. So I had done training as a life coach, and I loved how that helped people to access their inner knowing, really, the things that they already knew but just didn't have the space to kind of explore. But what I learned very soon in the training was that there was another layer, and that was the body. So I was on this mission to try and find something that incorporated both speaking and the physical body. So I was looking for something that combined Eastern and Western philosophies as well, because I found that the two together I felt were really important, but I couldn't find anything. And I happened to be going on holiday to Sri Lanka, and it was a birthday present to myself, my 30th birthday. And I met a woman who was an Amatsu practitioner, also on holiday. And that the course of my life changed. I realized I'd found what I'd been looking for, basically.
Wow. What's the name of this woman?
Her name is Helen, and she no longer practices Amatsu now. She has an amazing practice in Berkshire, working with mothers and babies, do some craniosacral work and deep work there. But she showed me a few things that Amatsu was capable of doing. And what surprised me the most about it was two things really. A, it was very gentle, and B, the change happened immediately. And that's something I I'd never come across before, and I couldn't grasp. And in fact, the first question that I asked her was, "Are you a witch?"
Did she do Amatsu on you
Because
then? Did you have a session with
she
her?
did. So the story goes that I was sort of pestering her, admittedly, and asking her questions. And in the end, she relented and she showed me a few things. And one of the things she talked about was how in Japan, the big toe is seen as really important. You may have seen some of the martial artists wearing the shoes, whereas the big toe has a separate
Yes.
little piece in the shoe. They're called tabi shoes. And they believe that the mobility of the big toe is really key to health. So she was showing us how to mobilize our big toe, sort of making circles with it. And she looked at me and said, "Well, yours looks as if it's stuck." And I was quite affronted, because at that point in my life, I was really fit, I was really healthy, I was doing lots of yoga. And to think that my big toe was stuck was actually quite upsetting. So I went off, and in probably my very more masculine state at that point in my life, I started to rotate my big toe really vigorously to unloosen this stuck big toe. I've learned a lot since then, but what happened was, and I then went off, and I was in the most relaxing place I think I've ever been, lying in a hammock by a lake, and I started to feel this tension in my jaw, which I knew from times when I've been very stressed, but there was nothing there to stress me out. And it carried on all day, and I couldn't get rid of it. I was trying to massage my jaw, I was opening and closing my mouth. And towards the end of the evening, I went over to her and I said, "Look, could I have done something to my jaw from my big toe?" And really, I was expecting her to sort of laugh at me and say, "Well, what are you talking about?" And she didn't say that. She just asked me to sit down on a chair, and she started to feel my foot. And she said, "No, your big toe's okay. You've done something to your ankle. You've slightly misaligned the main bone in your ankle, and that's affecting your jaw." And she started to work on my foot and my ankle. And as she did so, I could literally feel the tension drain out of my jaw. And she asked me to go for a walk up and down. And I remember vividly that walk from the chair, thinking, my life's changed. I have to know
It's
what she's just done.
incredible. I mean, like you described, the effects can be so immediate, and it's both wonderful and also upsetting to know that there's quite a few people who live in discomfort, and they could actually be feeling a lot better quite quickly. Because I think often if a problem has been there for a period of time, they might think, "Oh, it's going to take ages. It's going to take at least as long as I've had the pain for," or something like that. And I'm not saying it's always quick, but it's reassuring to know that there might be quicker solutions. And if you've been in pain for 5 years, it's nice. It might take you 5 years to get better.
Yeah, and I'm always really careful when I talk about
Yeah, you have to
how
be.
the possibilities around it, because what I discovered, to my slight disappointment when I started the training, was that I have a very sensitive system and I feel the changes happening. Most people don't feel what I feel. So they get the results, they get the benefit of the treatment, but they don't feel the process of it actually unraveling out of their body. And I didn't realize that really until I became a practitioner and was waiting for people to say, "Oh my gosh, yes, I feel this, this, and this." Some people do, and many people don't. And I think it's a level to which we are in tune with our own bodies as to what we can feel happening. In terms of the speed at which things change, I had only just done that to my jaw in the same 24 hours. So if I see someone that's had a problem for 10 years, my teacher always said we should really see people weekly for the same number of months as the years that they've had the problem. So if that doesn't sound too complicated, it takes time to unravel a problem.
It does take time, but
So,
I guess it's kind of a nice ratio, because it's like, yes, it's kind of a
yeah,
longer term, but not quick fix, but still not just like the daunting journey of like,
no,
for some people, decay. But yeah, of course, I guess it's quite hard to just undo some neural wiring that have been there for
yeah,
a long time. Um,
yeah, and all the compensations, of course,
yeah.
that we make.
How would you? So I tried to describe a bit in the intro, very succinctly, what Amatsu is, but could you present us Amatsu in your own words?
Yeah. Even after all these years of doing it, I mean, I've been doing Amatsu now for, 12 years. And even now I find it a challenge to describe it, because in essence, I like to use metaphors really. And the way I describe it is that if you imagine that there were 4 people holding the corners of a sheet, and they were all blindfolded, and a 5th person came along and pulled another part of the sheet, all 4 of them would feel where that 5th person was. They would feel the lines of tension. And Amatsu is looking for lines of tension in your body and finding the right place to press to release them. The sessions are done fully clothed, on a massage couch. There are no cracks or crunches or anything like that. But it essentially was born out of martial artists thousands of years ago fighting and injuring themselves. And they discovered, imagining this idea of the line of tension, they discovered that if they used a similar movement, but with a different intention and a different pace, they could unravel the impact that caused the injury in the first place. So it's almost like winding it back through a pathway towards truer health. And I think it's not a big leap of understanding to appreciate that. It's just that we're never taught that that's how the body works. We've been taught to think of our body in discrete units. We have specialists for different parts. Even ankle and knee specialists when their joints at the opposite ends of the same bones. And because that's the lens through which we view our bodies, we miss the essential wisdom, which is that everything's connected.
Yeah, and that's the way it should be treated. It's
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
You mentioned how Amatsu completely changed your life. I mean, of course, you discovered your calling, one of your calling. We'll talk about NG work a bit more. Did it change your perception of the world? Maybe that sounds a bit grand, but
it has changed my perception of the world over time, more and more. I think at that time I was a real gym bunny. So I was in the gym 5 times a week. I was spinning. I was lifting weights. I was fit. I was strong.
That's when we met, right?
I defined
when you were.
Yeah, exactly. That's how we met. I did do some yoga,
You did
but that
do
was
some
kind of
yoga,
part.
yeah.
That was part of my life at that point. But my main part of my life was being fit and strong, and it really defined my personality at that point. It was who I was. And I really had to, as I learned more about Amatsu, I started to feel the incongruence between those 2 approaches. And I couldn't put them together anymore. I couldn't be both people, because I started to realize that the excessive amount of exercise I was doing was disrespectful to this amazing system that is my body, is our bodies. And I had to change, which wasn't easy at all. It was a real shift. So I think that was the first change, I think, in my worldview. And it has developed from there, this sense of everything being connected. Really, everything is, not just in our bodies.
It's so hard to find the balance. I mean, how many people are really well-meaning and they try to do, like you say, quite a bit, etc., and actually realizing, I'm tired. I need to relax. Or the opposite. I'm resting. I'm taking care of my body. It's like, but you also need to move. It's
Move.
such a hard balance to find.
Well, I think the thing that's changed for me most recently, which might be relevant here, is a real understanding of the masculine and the feminine energy that we all carry within us. I know we're going to go on to talking about energy work, but this I think is important because it fits quite well here, is that I heard the most amazing quote from a woman called Dr. Soraya Oud, spelled O-U-D, last year. And she talks about the feminine energy being like a river and the masculine energy being like the river banks. And without the river, it's just a dry gully. Without the river banks, it's just a marshy flood.
Such a beautiful
And that's
metaphor.
the same with isn't it wonderful?
Yeah.
I mean, if you think of yourself like that and all your activities, whatever they may be, if you have both, you've got something that's powerful, potent, and contained and directionful, if that's a word.
Yeah.
And without one or the other, you end up with a huge lack. So that's been a real guiding thing. And I think if you're talking about balance, that's been my way recently of thinking about balance.
It's such a power. I've never heard the metaphor before, but it's a very powerful one. I really love it.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so you've had numbers of clients over the years coming to you with various conditions, etc. You started to incorporate more and more energy work, and you are probably doing to some extent before, maybe less consciously as you do now. But like, do you find that your clients are willing to understand the reasons why they might be healing in the way they do? Do you find they're just happy to be manipulated and come back to see on a more regular basis? Sorry, do they want to understand what's happening?
I think I've discovered really that I work on different layers, and people come to me with different levels of understanding about their body, and I can work at those different layers. So the first layer really is the physical body and pain. So I absolutely love, I mean, this is where I started. I absolutely love supporting people through healing their physical pain, because it can be so debilitating. It can ruin your life. To be able to actually do that is still for me the most precious thing. Back problems, knee problems, these kind of things I work with all the time. I get very good results with them, and that's what those people want. And I probably don't bring much of my energetic understanding to those kind of sessions. What I've noticed more recently, as I've started to expand, well, I think my sensitivity has expanded. I've worked on thousands of bodies now, and I started to experiment with just working with my hands off, feeling things in my own energy system. I did some training with an amazing woman called Suzanne Scurlock, who came over from the States in 2019. And she's a craniosacral therapist who's trained with really eminent people. And she opened me up to the potency of my own abilities with energy, I think.
2019, so it
That
would have been just before the pandemic. You
it
just managed
wasn't,
to
yeah.
fit your training right there.
Yeah,
Wow, a nip
absolutely.
of time.
Yeah, exactly. And it was really that understanding then that I could do more. And I didn't realize how important that was going to be.
That's kind
I
of
didn't know what was coming, as none of us did.
that's kind of yeah, and that's kind of you find like taking on that path now. You're doing more and more energy work with various
Yeah, I mean,
formats.
I don't always know how to describe this aspect either, because I always start, no matter who comes to me, I always start with the body. It is the gateway for me into everything. Because, I mean, I don't know if you're aware of the work of Gabor Mate and people like him who are trauma experts. There's a lot more information there that shows what we do hold in our body, in our cells, as memory. And I'm starting to see more people who have done lots of therapy, even psychotherapists themselves, who have done a lot of talking, and yet they feel they've reached the limits to what they can undo and unravel, because they feel they're holding things in their bodies. And this is a very new area of work for me, and I'm very careful how I talk about it. I'm careful who I work with. But I was talking to a therapist the other day, and I was saying that if you imagine a field with lots of stones and rocks in it, that over the years, the farmer's been picking out the rocks as they come to the surface naturally. And you just keep clearing the field and clearing the field, but the rocks come up naturally to the surface. Those are the kind of people that I'm working with, really. They've been picking up the rocks that have been rising to the surface. And I get the opportunity to help them to clear some of them that have come to the surface. They've been doing the work themselves. And that's when the energy work can be really powerful at clearing stuck things, stuck energy.
So how do you work with these people? Could you describe? I mean, I'm sure it's hard, but how would you describe as best as you can energy work?
For me, it's about first of all, asking them permission to access their energy field. It's definitely a two-way conversation. And really a lot of the work for me is about clearing my mind, clearing my own energy field as much as possible. Suzanne Scurlock talks about having a satellite dish and sitting in that satellite dish as the practitioner and feeling within your own energy field for, she calls them pings, but feeling for information within your own energy field. So you're never getting into somebody's field. You're never, it can feel very invasive for a person, actually, if you work like that. So it's about sitting back as far as possible. And again, this is a work that I do with someone lying on a treatment couch. I've already worked on their physical body, so there is a sense of connection between us. And then I basically go and I stand at their feet, I hold their feet, and I feel. And that might sound strange to people. It sounds strange to me. I still feel a huge sense of humility, a huge sense of really, it's not me. It's energy, and I happen to be able to access it.
And so the room is silent. There's nothing in the background.
Yes.
There's absolutely no talking.
There is talking, yeah. I mean, I will often say to people, take your awareness to a certain part of their body. Because what I learned with Amatsu was that sometimes by them, and this was how some of this started really, was having this understanding that bringing the individual person's conscious awareness to the treatment amplified everything that I could feel. And it was a really wonderful moment when I realized that to get the best out of these treatments, it wasn't me doing two, it was us exploring together. And so when people would bring that conscious awareness to a point, I could feel more. And it's the same with the energy work. I'll say, take your awareness to this part of your body. What can you notice? What are you feeling? And things start to appear for that person. They may connect to something that they've not connected to for a very long time. There might be a release of emotion. And truly at that point, the biggest work for me is to just make them feel so safe and so able to express whatever it is that's happening. And trust what's happening, trust it, and let them cry or let them feel.
Do you find like people have any embarrassment if anything strong come up, or they're already in that space where they know that's what they're there for? And
I think sometimes, I mean, people do apologize sometimes, and I think it's a natural response. We are used to containing ourselves, yeah, but I think by the time we get to that point, I never work with anyone until I've had a really full conversation with them on the phone. There's a real process before we get to that point, and it doesn't happen for everybody. And I think so much of it is timing. It's not particularly me or necessarily what I'm doing. It's like I was saying about the rocks in the field. It's all the work that's led up to that point where often people come to me when they are so ready to move forward. They are so desperate to find something. And a lot of people talk about feeling stuck, feeling blocked, feeling held back. And they know already so much that the knowledge is all there. It's just a matter of having that space.
How do you yourself end up clearing your own rock? So I guess it's very satisfying to help people the way you do, but it can also be, I assume, sometimes quite taxing, maybe physically, emotionally, mentally. How do you preserve your energy level, or how do you reset your energy levels?
Oh, it's a really good question. I mean, I think when I was first doing Amatsu, now that I've been doing that for such a long time, it's not something that I find tiring or taxing, strangely enough, because the way I move my body when I do that is quite restoring and quite energizing, in fact. So sometimes I would come into the clinic and feel tired, and then after 5 or 6 clients with Amatsu, I feel great, and much better than I would if I'd been on sitting at a computer. But with the deeper work, yes, certainly I feel I have to be a bit more mindful, because I have to take myself to a deeper place, I think, a different state of being to access what it is that I need to see. And certainly after a session like that, I will feel a bit spaced out. And and I have to kind of come back into myself. So I think with that, it's a sort of I recently changed how I was doing those sessions, because as my work was developing, I was almost shoehorning the energy work into a session that was what an Amatsu session would have been, so a shorter session. And it's really about having the respect for the work, seeing that it's a different process, it's for different kinds of people, and allowing a longer period of time and time in between the sessions to recalibrate, and to kind of come back into myself and clear anything that I have picked up perhaps from working at a deeper level.
So what do you feel works really well for you to ground? Like, you love walking. There's often stories with you, and you share, coming by the water. Sometimes you have somehow you have water near you. I don't know where that is actually. Where do you go?
Well, there's a swimming lake, Beckenham Place Park, that I sometimes go to in the summer. I have to admit, I'm a fair weather swimmer, but it's walking, being outside, and just having some peace and some silence is really important to me. And I have to actually factor that into my working week, because as you know, as a mom, that weekends are not downtime. It's not relaxing. It's busy, and so actually, what I've been learning to do is to factor in rest time, factor in recovery as part of my working schedule, and I'm not feeling bad about it, because I know that I can't really function in the way that I really want to unless I have some time that's just me and peaceful and letting go of energy that doesn't belong to me.
Absolutely, yeah. The weekend, as a parent, is not a weekend. No. For sure. The little ones are up early and they're like, what do we do? Where are we going? So
absolutely.
Yeah. So you have provided treatments in Dulwich since 2010.
Yeah.
You were also working part-time at Condé Nast until last year, so 2021, when you made the jump to dedicate yourself entirely to the well-being of people through Amatsu, through energy work, also through Soul Circles. So we'll talk about that shortly. What gave you the confidence to leave your corporate job?
It was a slow, gradual process, I think. I was talking about this to somebody recently and saying how, often we see people that appear to or they do seem to take these great big leaps of faith into a different life. And that was never me. It's taken me this long. It's taken me, 10, 12 years to gradually shift from one life to another. And I think it's just important for people to realize because I think one of the things that stops people following perhaps a dream or an idea is the fear of leaping. And I don't think it has to be like that. Mine was such a gradual process, and the confidence came over time. The company was changing and I was being offered redundancy, which obviously made a big difference. But even then, the fear was quite strong. I had to work really hard on myself to step away from something that had become a really big part of my life, and that I didn't know life without. So, it was. I had to do a lot of work around fear, facing fear, feeling the feelings that come up when we have fear. So the really extreme anxiety and worst case scenarios, catastrophizing, all of those things came up for me. And I've worked with different people and found different ways of facing the fear instead of letting it engulf me. And it was a really amazing learning process to keep stepping forward, facing the fear and going, no, I still think this is the right thing for me. So,
and I think the fear keeps creeping very often. I mean, I'm the same as you, like the anxiety that comes with being your own employer, which is also really thrilling because you do things your own way. It creeps back. It is just a constant work, I find. It's not just like you do at the start of the business and then that's done and over with. It's something you need to keep dealing with on a regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's a good message for people to hear, isn't it? That, we don't just kind of make these changes in our lives and then that's it. And again, I think that's something that puts people off because we're sort of looking for this easeful existence. We want things to feel easy. And actually, it's a false promise because life that isn't what we're ever going to actually have. We're going to face new challenges. And the joy is actually facing them and overcoming them. And realizing that you're stronger and learning from each step of, okay, I can expand a bit more. I can challenge myself a little bit in a different way, or I remember how I handled this. That's the joy, really, of living a conscious life, I think. Absolutely.
Do you find like having worked in a corporate environment help you with aspects of your business?
Yeah, definitely. It's, the skills have been really invaluable in terms of just setting up and having the confidence to value my services, I guess, to just run a business, having that ability. I worked in sales, which has a really terrible reputation, but I think I was fortunate working at Condé Nast because I had this amazing brand that stood behind me, and I didn't have to kind of, it was something that people were wanting to sell, to buy. But I think also there's an understanding there of, I think we can become a little bit embarrassed about selling ourselves. That's a very different experience. And what I've really learned, what I really remember, is that there are people out there who absolutely want to hear from me. There are people who want my work. It's not about me selling and all of that sort of thing. It's about presenting myself to the right people who I know I'm going to be able to help. And if I don't do that, they won't find me.
Yeah, that's a nice way to think about it, because I think a lot of people, I find, especially people who are trying to offer services that have to do with well-being and healing, etc., they tend to often do it to their detriment, at least to start with, not pricing themselves as they should, for a while doing it for free. And I understand the want to build up a little bit of experience, but their skill is valuable. So yeah, that is a tricky thing to handle. But you're right, it's just about making yourself visible, and trusting that the right people will come, and word of mouth.
Yes. I mean, all the business has been built pretty much on word of mouth, which is, I know, not the speediest way. And that's probably why it's taken me this long to leave the corporate world. But it's the best way, obviously, because you get those personal recommendations. But yeah, I think, the important thing is you have enough energy and you price well enough so that you do a good enough job so that people recommend you.
I wanted to go back to talking about, because I haven't talked about that yet, but I mentioned soul circles. So you're starting holding your soul circles, I don't know if it's last year, so 2021 or 2020, you can correct me on that. Can you explain what they are, how often they happen, and who they're for?
Yeah, sure. So it was June 2020 when I first started the Soul Circles, and it was a real turning point for me in my work, because I think up until that point I had been hiding part of myself in my work. So I had not been showing the spirituality that I've had for a very, very long time. I've carried that with me all of my adult life, and yet I didn't feel like it was appropriate to bring it into my work. And that shifted when I started to bring the Soul Circles, because I realized I had a whole wealth of experience and depth that I just wasn't brave enough, I think, to show, because I thought it would put people off. Mm. So the Soul Circles, it moved from being very much about the physical body and pain to recognizing that people have a soul, have a spirit, which needs nurturing and supporting, and really these Soul Circles were for people who've never really done this sort of work before. They may have done a yoga and maybe a bit of meditation where they felt the sense of something bigger than themselves, but they've not really explored it, but they have a curiosity and they want to live in a deeper, more connected way. So they happen once a month. So I'll have a break. I'll do one in July and then, this week, and then break over August and back in September.
And do you already have a date for that one?
So the September date, that's a very good question. I do.
I'm just like, let's put it right here because your podcast will be released before September. So people can be like, I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, it'll be Wednesday the 14th of September, 8 till 9:15. And it's on Zoom because I have people from all over the place that do these circles with me. And so I've kept it on Zoom, even though, after lockdown, we could have met in person. But I think one of the reasons the soul circles work so well on Zoom, and I know there are people who wouldn't do it, even if they could come, if it was in person, is that it's I use movement at the beginning of every soul circle, and I choose music that's appropriate for the theme that we're working with. And I ask people to step away from their cameras and to move their bodies freely. And that's not something most people are comfortable with doing in a room of other people. So it's very, very freeing. And I think it helps if people have got kids, they put their children to bed and then they come and spend some time nourishing their soul, basically.
So you offer these monthly soul circles, but very recently you started to work slightly differently. You took a group of women to the British Museum. There's an exhibition, so it's now summer 2022. There's an exhibition on at the moment called Feminine Power, the Divine to the Demonic. And you were really drawn to do something with that. So I guess it's goddesses across time and across various cultures.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, different cultures, different ages. It's a really wonderful collection. I mean, I won't say too much about it because the people on the trip also, they had their sense of it. But what I really wanted to do was to take people so they could feel the energy there, as opposed to reading the interpretations that had been written and the sound bites, etc. And that's what my intention was, and that's how I set it up. And I think it was a powerful experience for each person that was there in a different way. And then we had time afterwards to talk, to reflect and share the experience. So I think I loved it. I absolutely loved being there to support those women because of the way I can work with energy, I was able to amplify the experience for them. I was able to stand with them, support them as they connected it with different energies there. And it worked better than I could have hoped. And as soon as I'd finished, I thought, oh my gosh, I want to take more women to experience this, because it's a really, really wonderful way of tapping into divine energy and to see what messages are there for us.
Yeah, and I'm so pleased that you started to do in-person events. So of course, because at the moment people could see you in person for treatments, potentially for energy work as well. But it's really nice that you organize as opposed to one-to-one basis, like starting to work as a group.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually one of the participants is very keen for me to start doing some sort of, she wanted monthly gathering. I was like, there's no way I can do monthly anything else, but maybe there'll be something coming up, a quarterly gathering for people who just simply to get people together to meet other people who are starting on a spiritual journey. Because what I've found with lots of my clients and lots of people who are drawn to my work is that none of their friends think the same way as they do. So they feel quite lonely and a bit isolated. I think a lot of people who are coming to me, they're the only one in their group of friends that is starting to think a little bit differently and wanting to follow more of a spiritual path. And they feel a bit lonely in that. And I know that I've got quite a number of clients who feel like that. So it seems natural that the best thing to do would be to create some sort of space where people can come together and just have these sorts of chats and these discussions and share knowledge and growth and inspiration. But that would be in person. So I'm just thinking about where that might be, location and dates and things. But it's something that I'm definitely considering because I think there's a need for it.
There is a need for it, definitely. And I can think of very few people better suited than you to undertake or pursue this journey with. Lorna, a big thank you for being my guest today. Everyone, if you'd like to find out a little bit more about Lorna, you can head to her website, LornaClansey.com. That's all in one word. And you can also head to her Instagram account, and that's Lorna.Clansey. And don't hesitate to reach out if you're feeling drawn to potentially work with Lorna. So you have these soul circles that are available that could be for physical treatments. If you've had a lingering injury that nothing seems to be able to help, please go see Lorna, because she has worked what seems to be a miracle. So I do recommend her to some of my clients as well when they feel stuck. Nothing seemed to help. I hope you enjoy listening to this podcast. Bye for now. Have a lovely day, and thank you for listening.